Welcome back. You're watching NewsX. The University of Hong Kong has said a statue commemorating the Tiananmen Square massacre must be removed. The pillar of shame depicts dozens of torn and twisted bodies and was at the forefront of vigils held in the city to commemorate the 1989 crackdown. The university said the decision was being taken on the latest risk assessment and legal advice without expanding on this explanation. Beijing has recently moved to silence opposition to its rule in Hong Kong. Tiananmen is still a heavily censored topic in modern China. The anniversary was marked annually in Hong Kong until it was banned by authorities in 2020, citing COVID measures. But once again, this is continuing to be an attempt by China to show that it is the big boss everywhere. We'll talk more about this. Joining me on the platform is Ambassador Shilkant Sharma, former diplomat, former 9th Secretary General of the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. Also joining us on the show is Dr. Srikanth Kondapalli, China and foreign policy expert. Tenzin Sundu, Tibetan activist and writer, is here with us as well. And last but not the least, Kayum Uyghur, activist, is also joining us on this very important chat. Ambassador Sharma, starting with you, sir. Well, what does this tell you about the kind of future or the kind of actions that China will be taking in Hong Kong? They obviously look down upon the Tiananmen Square massacre. They think of it as an impediment to their progress, and obviously anything related to that or pertaining to that is going to be obliterated, and that's exactly what's taking place in Hong Kong at this point in time.
Well, it's of a piece with the approach of Xi Jinping. You know, when he invokes the red genes and when he talks to his army and his party, so he is cast in the Mao Zedong mold. And for them, the political power flows through the barrel of gun. And barrel of gun is actually, what does it mean? It means actually a killing machine. So, without any exaggeration, the state in its concept and in the Communist Party's concept is a killing machine with a license to kill. So what they did in Tiananmen was completely, within their rights to do. And those who were opposing had to face that consequences. And this is time and again seen in the Chinese history of the last 70 years, which they are proudly commemorating. Now Hong Kong was a different two system, one country, but they have been of late trying to reduce that two system, one country to, a certain uniformity of the Communist Party. And they are giving messages all around, like to Taiwan, they gave a very clear message. And yesterday there was the story that Xi Jinping has said that he wants to do it peacefully, and to get Taiwan included peacefully. So peacefully, in their context means, in their playbook, peaceful includes coercion, peaceful includes playback, peaceful includes, intimidation. So their playbook has all these elements which those in democratic societies may have a difference of view, which is what the Denmark, artist found appalling, and that's how the Hall of Shame, that the statue. But they have no love for it, as Mao Zedong said, it's not embroidery. So they have no respect for fine arts in that sense, and fine arts have to play according to the Communist Party's diktat. So I would say that what they are doing in Hong Kong is of a piece with the policies which are there in Beijing. And those in the West who thought that Hong Kong could be two systems and the liberal democratic ideal would continue, they, I think, are in for a surprise if they are not yet already surprised. So, one should not mince one's words when you describe this. Because if the Taliban had to remove the Buddhas, one can dismiss them as the extremists. But here is a country which wants to be the number one, which wants to dislodge US from #1 position in the world, and which wants to, which is member of WTO as a marketing economy, and which wants to join now the TPP. All these things are there, but their methods are still primitive.
Right. Absolutely. Dr. Kondapalli, China obviously wants to dislodge the United States and become #1. But the big question is, can it do that by offending, the rest of the world, which is democratic?
Well, in this case, the bone of contention is implementation of Article 23 of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region. The Hong Kong government, in conjunction with the central government in Beijing, they tried to tweak this legislation, Article 23. This is to curb the freedoms of press, assembly, protest, distribution of information, or others, including the statute, broadly defined. So as a result of their efforts, there were over 500,000 Hong Kong residents marched. This was in 2003 when the effort was made. Subsequently, the Hong Kong government in 2012 began changing the curriculum, including in University of Hong Kong and other places, and reinforcing the Chinese identity rather than Hong Kong identity. So reforming education in July 2012, that resulted in the so-called patriotic education in schools, textbooks, revisions, and so on, which further led to demonstrations. Now, this is a whole package as a part of the National People's Congress resolution in March this year. Previously, it was extradition treaty, and now it has become the national security law. So they identified various areas, and any icons which is reflective of the statue-like thing, because every June 4th, in Victoria Terminal, they have over 500,000 to nearly 3 million residents demonstrating. Of course, this June, they were not allowed to do because of the national security law provisions, and several of them were bundled, including those traditional protesters. So in other words, there has been a concerted effort, because Tiananmen Square incident in June 4, 1989, according to the Communist Party, is counter-revolutionary. And of course, they arrested Zhao Jiang, who was the premier at the time and general secretary of the party, and he was removed and put in house arrest. And of course, he passed away a few years ago. So according to them, this is counter-revolutionary, which means that all efforts need to be made to remove those icons of democracy or other. So what we have is a strange situation where, like the South China Sea arbitration, where the Filipinos have gone to the court, the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague, and received the verdict in July 2016 in their favor, while the Chinese walked away. And this is from the proceedings of that Hague Tribunal ruling. In this case as well, the Chinese would say, this is Hong Kong government's view, not our view. Secondly, they would also, jettison the ruling itself by saying this is not applicable to China and we have our own rule of law. So by the national security law, since implemented since March this year, they would simply jettison all of these. Of course, with a loss of face, but China is not worried about the loss of face on these issues. So where we are is the might is important. Might is what is determining. So from that context, they would not be worried about the conflict with the US or others, because even US is compromising with China on trade, on Taiwan, on a host of other issues.
All right. Tenzin, your thoughts on this? Obviously, the one narrative which has come out of what our previous panelists have had to say is that no matter what, China is continue or going to continue on that path of, that leap forward, and whoever, comes in the way is going to be trampled? Tenzin?
Unmute yourself.
Yeah. Yes. So in this case, what China is doing by getting the statue of shame removed out of University of Hong Kong is a blatant act of, firstly, denial of history and an attempt to erase the memory of Tiananmen Square massacre. When the Tiananmen Square massacre happened in 1989, 4th of June, right in the middle of Tiananmen Square, there was another statue called Statue of Victory. It was the statue of democracy. It was the statue of hope of the people. It was built by the students and the workers right there, and that was destroyed there. And it was such a loss of hope for the people of China who wanted democracy, who wanted free press. And after many years, in memory of those young Chinese who gave their life for freedom in China, this statue, the Statue of Shame, was created outside China, in Hong Kong. And today, China is hell-bent on removing this. So this is, I look at this as an extrajudicial efforts to consolidate China's image, and most importantly, the attempt to erase the memory of Tiananmen Square. Tiananmen Square has been always commemorated in Hong Kong, but not in China. And strangely, around the world, Tiananmen Square is known around the world as China's only and the most important effort for bringing democracy in China. But within China, there is no memory of this. People in China do not know what happened on 4th of June, 1989. It is important for the rest of the world, just as Professor Kondapalli has said, that the world can do very little, but the world must know what China is doing, and the world must prepare themselves to see what else China can be doing, which may really have huge impact on freedoms and democracies around China and around Chinese neighboring countries.
All right. Qayyum, pretty much in line with the policy and the aggression that China has adopted when it comes to the Uyghur population in Xinjiang. And this is obviously, not a very big deal for China. They have conducted far worse things in the last few years, and you can vouch for that.
Well, certainly I can. Some people joke that the history of China is unpredictable. It dwindles and it changes to the narrative as party wishes. It happened to be that I was in China at that time in 1989, so I have seen myself what happened. Unfortunately, young generation does not know what is happening now and what has happened in the past. Speaking about Hong Kong, I'd like to draw a parallel between Uyghur region, what we refer to East Turkestan. China has promised the same autonomy rights, same self-determination to Uyghur people as well as Tibetans in the early 1950s. Unfortunately, they didn't hold it, and everything was a fake. So just looking at what happened in Hong Kong, we can draw conclusion that once more Chinese Communist Party is cheating, not fulfilling the laws and international treaties or all laws and regulations they have signed up on. And no wonder Taiwan is very anxious to know what will happen next. Are they the next? And what is happening in Uyghur region right now, it has been rightfully called genocide, and the same fate Tibetan people are facing right now. It is the question of being staying alive or being exterminated by the Communist Party. So yes, the thing in Hong Kong is very important, but it does not just refer to Hong Kongers as well only. it have to be a global response needed to challenge and to stand up to the bully, which is the Communist Party of China.
Absolutely. And Ambassador Sharma, there's another threat, another violation that China is on the cusp of, and that is Taiwan. In order for the world to understand what China is really about, how important is the cause of Taiwan at this point in time as well?
I think the statement from the US in this regard was very, sage, I would say very wise and statesmanlike. They said that the agreement was that Taiwan has to be, whatever is done with Taiwan has to be done peacefully. That was the agreement. And they said one China policy, all right, but Taiwan should be integrated peacefully. Now, Chinese are doing, all kinds of noises about it. They intimidate them, and then a few years back, Xi Jinping himself had talked about smashing their heads, and now he's saying that it will be done peacefully. It should be done peacefully, but they're trying all their devices. So, what is peaceful for you and me and for the world, a democratic world, and what is peaceful for China? Maybe there is a big gap between these two, and so we have to see what they mean. The second thing is that they make an example of, they do something to make an example for the other cases. Like they have fires burning in Uyghur, they have fires burning in Tibet, they have problems in Taiwan, they have problem in Hong Kong, and they have problems in South China Sea as well as, in the borders. So they take a particular step and action as a message to the rest. And the world is also made to think whether on what they should act, because there is no tipping point in any of these things for the world unless they take a concerted action on everything. So this is where they keep feeling like a commando, whether how much they can push. And they have done in the past, like they push, but then they pull back. So it's, here is a statecraft which still, of a country which is very big, which still resorts to commando tactics of pushing, feeling, retracting, and again pushing. This is the way, the Chinese way, of statecraft with Chinese characteristics. And so what they're doing in Hong Kong, if you see the pattern over the last, as the professor very, systematically recalled what they've been doing in Hong Kong. And the point that he recalled, I wanted the point to be repeated, that be it small crowds, be 500,000 people, or be it a former prime minister, Chiang Zemin also they have put under the house arrest. So they do not want, any objections to what they want to do. So this is it's a frightful system, and the earlier its halo and the veil is removed, the better it is for the world to know the true face of the rulers in Beijing.
Dr. Kondapalli, with the economy not doing so well in China, and the Americans and other countries breathing down China's neck, do you think that they can manage all these frontiers that they have opened?
In fact, this could also be for the Chinese. This could also be a kind of distraction in order to not answer the questions related to economic growth, to the other problems in ethnic minority regions, or the other areas where they are facing acute problems like energy crisis, the decline in growth rate, the floods in Henan recently. In order to divert the attention, these probably could be actions so that they remain, because there is no concerted action on these issues. And so you can actually distract the international community by these. There is the COP26 that is coming up by month end, and China had not submitted any of its written comments in reducing the emissions, etc. So there are so many fronts: India-China front, there is a Taiwan front, South China Sea, Senkaku Islands. You have also the Afghan front now open. And so this is actually also a plan to divert the attention. The pillar of shame issue or other issues is also a strategic probably.
Okay. Qayyum, concluding thoughts from you and Tenzin, and then we wrap up. Only a couple of minutes left. Qayyum, coming to you first.
It is no surprising that the statue was removed, since CCP does not acknowledge Tiananmen events. Tiananmen massacre happened in the first place. What is surprising, the speed of which they accelerate the suppression and the crush of democracy in Hong Kong. I happened to be in Hong Kong 2015, and for the last 7 years, we can see the huge difference. What was happening, it is no longer impossible. And, China is accelerating its crackdown and pushing forward with its, China Dream agenda.
Okay. Tenzin?
Yeah, what is called the peaceful resolution. I think this is absolute a misnomer, a lie. It happened in 1949, 1950 when China invaded Tibet, East Turkestan, southern Mongolia, and China called it peaceful liberation. Today, China is using the same term after 70 years when they are trying to talk about Taiwan, calling it peaceful. And then the problem is not just with China. The problem is with other countries who are watching. India at that time watched China invade Tibet, and India thought is going to be friends with China, and they call it Hindi Chini Bye Bye. Today, China is doing the same thing, calling it peaceful liberation. And we know how peaceful that can be. In the invasion of Tibet, China killed 1 million Tibetans out of 6 million Tibetans. We lost 1/6 of the Tibetan population. And sadly, the rest of the world did not care at that time. Now it's time for India and everybody else.
That's the difference. Tenzin, that's the difference. Earlier on, the world did not care. But now, because of China's own actions, the world is beginning to not only care, but to take stock of what China is doing as well. Thank you, everyone, for being a part of this wonderful conversation. We dip into a short break, folks. Be right back.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.